Okay, so let me now introduce Congressman Jim Jordan. He represents Ohio's 4th District. And growing up in Ohio, Congressman Jordan prepared for his future in Congress by winning an impressive 4 state championships in wrestling. And he had a career record of 150 wins and 1 loss. He was first elected to Congress in 2006 after serving in the Ohio legislature between 1995 and 2006. Congressman Jordan serves on the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, where he is the chairman of the subcommittee on Regulatory Affairs, Stimulus Oversight, and Government Spending. He also serves on the Committee on the Judiciary, where he's a member of both the Subcommittee on the Constitution and the Subcommittee on Intellectual Property, Competition, and the Internet. So, Congressman Jordan, thank you.
Thank you. I tell folks, don't clap. You haven't heard me talk yet. Plus 2 politicians back to back, your brave souls. It's good to be with you. I will first thank Mercatus and the great work that you all do, and the world we live in today, understanding that if you're going to get economic growth, you got to have reasonable tax policy and not ridiculous regulatory policy. So we appreciate the work. Let me just make a couple comments and take your questions. And I apologize. We're having a markup that started 5 minutes ago that I'm supposed to be at in Judiciary Committee, so I do want to get to that. Let me do the good news, bad news. Good news is, never forget this. In spite of all the problems we face, I tell every group this today because I think it's important. Greatest country in history. Never forget that fact. I had the opportunity 6 weeks ago to be at the Reagan Library, and when you go out, they had this new exhibit, and you literally walk through each room. In each room, you got emotional because you thought about what the country had to do. We forget how bad it was. And what we had to deal with in 1980, 81, when President Reagan took office, they had this one room. It was interesting. Think foreign policy. The Iron Curtain and the Communist Bloc, Eastern Bloc countries. They had all the bad guys' pictures on the wall. They had Ortega and some of the Eastern Bloc, and of course they had Gaddafi, who's still a bad guy. His picture was on the wall too. It was just interesting. The things Reagan had to overcome economically with interest rates and everything. So I tell every group I understand how difficult it is right now in the country, but we've been through tough times before, and we've risen to the occasion every single time, 200 plus years, and we will be able to do it again. And frankly, the optimism that Reagan had is critical when you think about what we face. Because as the speaker said, and as frankly as I've been saying, the country is broke. We can't keep doing the same old, and we have to cut spending. You guys all know the numbers. Our debt to GDP ratio, deficit to GDP ratio, you start looking at where they're at, and they're comparable to the countries we've read about the last year and a half on the front page. And we've got to change. But you can't get there alone just by cutting spending. I mean, we have to do that. We have to get our fiscal house in order. But you have to have economic growth if you're ultimately going to deal with the numbers we're facing. You got a $14 trillion national debt and going to go over 20 in the next decade. You have to have economic growth to ultimately deal with this. And to have economic growth, you got to have the right framework, and you all understand this. You got to have reasonable tax policy. The one area I think we may be able to agree with the president. There's not much I agree with our president on, but if you remember his State of the Union address, when he talked about lowering corporate tax rates, that's something we have to think about doing. I mean, I would actually make the case that I think it's almost unpatriotic not to be for lowering the corporate tax rate today when you think about what we have to deal with in the international marketplace. And then, of course, we got to have not just reasonable tax policy, but you got to have the right energy policy. And, of course, what we're focused on is regulatory policy. You can't have the kind of growth we need to get out of this situation if you don't improve all those areas. There are some good things that I think are being introduced in the REINS Act that Jeff Davis has. Tim Walberg has a bill that he's introduced which says the EPA can't do anything unless Congress gives it specific approval. Obviously, we know that's a concern. There was a telling moment in the Oversight Committee a few weeks ago. We had a hearing on regulatory concerns. And small business owners from around the country were invited in. One happened to be from our district, Jack Busher. Busher Electric from Minster, Ohio. Very successful company. Jack started this 20-some years ago. Leader in his community, like all these small business owners who were in front of the committee are. And I thought the most compelling question was asked by a freshman member. And again, I think this freshman class is really the key to helping us turn this country around, put us on the right path. But this freshman asked the simple question. He said, if you knew then what you know now, would you start it? If you knew then what you know now, would you have started? And pretty appropriate question. And here was the sad fact. Every single witness on that stand said, I would not have started my business. And because of all the things you have to, I have two buddies who are in manufacturing, been great friends of mine for years. As I mentioned, my background's in wrestling. These guys are wrestling guys. Boys wrestle with our sons. And successful manufacturers, and I was Bruce and Mike, brothers, and I was talking with them one day. This is a couple years ago, actually. And Mike said to me, and this is just like Mike speaking straight to me, he says, Jim, we love being in business. We hate being employers, and we hate being employers because of the stuff you make us do. Pointed right at me. So I mean, that's what we're up against, and our job on the committee is to look, it's just to bring attention to, we're the oversight committee. Our job is to shine the light of day on the ridiculous things that make it tough for the job creators to create jobs, those things that are an impediment to economic growth. And that's what we're going to do. Now, think about this. Today is an important day. I think it's great that you're having this conference this day. The 1099 provision is going to get overturned. We're going to vote that. I mean, who would have thought the other party, and you know, I won't get partisan here, but the other party, the health care bill was there. That was it. That's the cat's meow. That's their number one thing. They got that passed, and yet here they are repealing a provision in their signature piece of legislation because the American people said, this makes absolutely no sense. This is stupid. This is ridiculous. Business owners said the same thing. So that's the role of our committee, to draw attention to those things that absolutely make absolutely no sense. We had one other example I'll give you, then as I said, I'll be brief and I'll take any questions you got and get to committee. OSHA and the noise provision they were going to put in place. Have you followed this one? Where they were telling manufacturers, it's not good enough that you have ear protection for your employees, but you got to put barricades and barriers up around your machines to stop the noise. I mean, it was millions of dollars this was going to cost manufacturers. And because we raised enough concern about this, they're no longer going to do that. That's what our role is as we move forward. And I think we're going to be successful. I really do. I think we're going to do the right kind of things to create the environment where we can have economic growth and have a resurgence in this country, just like they did back in the 80s with President Reagan. If you get a chance, and I'll stop here, and I know politicians say they'll stop here 5 times, but I mean it. I will stop here. Read the column. Read the column that Tony Blankley wrote December 20th in the Washington Times. A powerful piece. And the title of the column is called The American Miracle. And let me preface it by saying this. In my time in public life, I have never seen the American people more ready, more receptive for the things that need to be done, the tough love things that need to be done to fix the country. The people are ready. Read this column. Blankley's point is this. He says, and he wrote it better than I'll say it, but he said in early 2009, everybody in this country was scared. Everyone was scared. 401ks had lost value. People lost jobs. People lost their homes. General Motors, the greatest corporation in American history, was going bankrupt. Everybody was nervous. Everybody was scared. Well, the market was down. It's the truth. We all were. Along comes a new president, and he promises more big government. Promises what politicians typically promise. You know, bailout, stimulus, all those things that took place. And he said, then the American miracle occurred. And the American people said, we will embrace liberty over the so-called protection of big government. And he makes the point, no other people on the planet would have made that decision. And he calls it the American miracle. I think the American people are ready for the things that have to be done on a regulatory front, on a tax front, and frankly on a spending front to put us back on the right path. The central question is, are the politicians, will we live up to the standard the American people set? And that's our charge. And I happen to have one other responsibility in this Congress, and that's heading the Republican Study Committee, which is this group of conservatives in the Republican Conference. Our mission is real simple, to make sure our party acts like our party, to do what Dick Armey's, to follow Dick Armey's line. I don't know if Dick Armey said, when we act like us, we win. When we act like them, we lose. Our job is to make sure we act like us. And we take that very seriously as we move forward on this issue and a host of others that I think are important to having a America that's going to be strong forever. So I'll stop there and take your questions. And I apologize, but I do have to run the committee. So you get and remember, even though you're not in the 4th District of Ohio, you still pay my salary, and there's this thing we call the First Amendment. So you're allowed to yell at me. You're allowed to ask any question you want. And I got about 5 minutes, and I got to go.
So let's have questions quickly. Now's your chance.
Look at that. That's never happened. Oh, that. I guess. Okay.
Al McGurlin all the way in the back. I'll identify him for you. Al.
Boy, I would have lots of questions, but I guess I'll stick with one. I read the Republican study budget proposals, and I was struck by the fact that it just seemed to me that you were kind of leaving agriculture alone. We had that GAO report that just came out, talked about ethanol and all the duplicity there as well. Do you have any plans on reforming ag policy?
Look, I will tell you from a personal standpoint, yeah, we do need to tackle that. I'm Western Ohio, West Central Ohio, and the start of the Corn Belt. We have pretty big agriculture in our district. I vote against the Farm Bill, and I tell my corn growers, in fact, I'm meeting with them next Tuesday. It'll be an interesting meeting. I tell the corn growers, I'm all for ethanol. I'm just tired of the government subsidizing and protecting it. I mean, think about this. Tell me a product in history that gets what ethanol gets. They get the tariff protection, blender's tax credit, mandated usage, and subsidy to put in the pumps to do the E15, E85. So I don't know in my lifetime. I can't think of another product. Maybe there is one, but every time I ask that question, no one tells me another product that gets 4 protections from government. So you're exactly right. Look, the situation is so bad, everything has to be on the table. You really have to look at it all. And as I said before, you have to have economic growth because we had the most conservative budget. I introduced it last year, the only one that balanced in Congress. Our budget balanced in 9 years, and we were viewed as the radical crazies, you know. You talk to folks back home and they'll go, hey, Jordan, you big sissy, what are you doing taking 9 years? You know, do it like we have to do in our business and our family. We were considered radical in this town, but even ours, which gets to balance in 9 years, in that 9 years, obviously you're still piling on debt because you're still running deficits till you get to balance. So the most conservative budget still gets to like 18 trillion in debt over the next decade. And Obama's plan, if you saw that, what he unveiled a week and a half ago, unbelievable. The lowest he gets is $700 billion deficit, 3% of GDP, which is just, any economist will tell you, you got to be lower than 3%. And he gets there with pretty rosy assumptions on revenue and economic growth. Just doesn't make any sense.
At Casano GE, how would you define the right energy policy and the right regulatory policy?
The right energy policy is to use more of the energy we have to let permitting take place in the Gulf. I've had the opportunity to travel to, and I know sometimes in this town we get tired of hearing this, but we should drill and we should use the resources the good Lord has blessed us with, use them in as safe a way as possible. We're the most environmentally safe country on the planet, but we got to use what we have. And I take it back to the big picture. And I believe this just as sure as I'm standing here. And maybe there are folks on the left who may not think this. The world's a dangerous place. We all understand that. We're seeing it play out in the Mideast right now. But it's a more dangerous place if America's not leading. So it's safer when America leads. You cannot lead militarily, diplomatically, if you're not the big economy. You have to be the strongest economic. You have to be the leading economy in the world if you're going to be the leading military, leading country diplomatically. And you can't be the leading economy in the world if you don't have adequate energy. It is really that basic. So if we want a safer planet, we need to have an energy policy that makes sense. I really believe that. Some on the left would argue with me, but I just think they're flat wrong. So we need to use all the resources that we have. Obviously from Ohio, coal country, we think that's important. We got abundance of coal in this country. We should use it. Nuclear, and we should drill for the oil that we have. I've been to ANWR. I always tell this, and you all know this story, but I probably heard it. We flew over ANWR. I mean, we flew all over the whole darn thing. There's nothing to see. I mean, there's a big mountain and it slopes forever, miles and miles and miles to the sea. I didn't see one caribou. I didn't see one polar bear. But at mile marker 0, pump station number 1, 75 miles from ANWR at the Alaskan pipeline, there are caribou everywhere. I mean, it's amazing. We had it on our website. They're just all over the place. So it's ridiculous that we're not using it. I got time for one more, and I got to run. Anyone? Last chance to yell to Congressman.
Thank you. This is Gary Becker. I'd like for you to consider, in either this talk or in future, the ability of the private sector to create jobs as a return on investment as a goal.
Yeah, well said.
And
well said.
Not one comment that you made today, unfortunately, or Senator Warner made earlier, dealt with anything with regards to jobs.
Yeah.
And I think we all, like myself, many of us are employed here, but many of us outside this room are not.
No kidding. Well, no, I guess what I was maybe I didn't make it clear. To create a framework for economic growth, that's what policymakers' job is, to create the right framework so you can have economic growth. Economic growth is job creation. So we don't create jobs, politicians don't create jobs, private sector does, but we create the framework that's conducive to job creation and economic growth. That's what we're all about. And you got to have reasonable regulatory policy, you got to have smart energy policy, and you got to have good tax policy if you're going to get there. That's why I mentioned those. Great. Thank you all very much. Keep up the great work.